Hello friends, a very good day to you. Today we will be talking about Mughal decline. Okay. So here we will analyze the various causes for the decline of the Mughal Empire in India. But before we proceed into the causes of the decline of the Mughal Empire in India, let us get a background. Getting a background is always very important when we are studying history. And also let us remember a truism about history. The truism is that most of the empires which have gone through a phase of decline, you see all empires go through a phase of consolidation, then a phase of reaching the height, and then a sharp decline. Okay, so most empires go through this cycle, and most of these empires which during the cycle in the phase of this cycle where they reach their declining phase, okay, this is caused mostly because of internal mechanisms. All right. Therefore, there are various aphorisms in literature also that an empire is first made hollow from the inside, and then outside forces take over that empire. So this is quite true when we analyze the various empires in history. Now, as far as the history of the Mughal Empire is concerned, remember that Akbar had created an administrative and revenue system which was, to some extent, we can also call it a foolproof. Okay, and there were various fail-safe measures that he had implemented so as to prevent this entire system from going through this cycle of decline. Okay, and his religious policy, Akbar's religious policy, the policy of cosmopolitanism that he followed, all right, it was designed in such a way so as to hold up the various administrative and other measures of the empire and bind them together through this, the philosophy of rule, which is the religious and cosmopolitan philosophy which he undertook. Okay, but however, with the rise of Aurangzeb, and Aurangzeb's reversal of Akbari policies, we see that the beginning of the end of this empire already begins, and by the time of the death of Aurangzeb, this movement towards decline is becomes sharp. Okay, after the death of Aurangzeb, this movement becomes sharp, and then the Mughal Empire flows into a decline. Of course, there are the obvious factors about the declining Mughal state. First of all, weak successors, which is a cause behind the decline of many empires. Okay, many medieval and also ancient empires, that is weak successors. Okay, and it is because of the fact that these kind of systems, these kind of governmental systems, okay, empire systems and systems based upon autocratic rule are predicated upon the prowess of emperors. Okay, they are predicated upon the prowess and personality of the rulers. Okay, because it is the rulers who are at the head of this empire, and they decide the policies of this empire. And therefore, if a strong ruler is succeeded by a weak ruler, of course you will see a decline in the fortunes of these empires. Okay, so for medieval empires and ancient empires, we often come across this particular term, weak successors, and it is quite true because these empires and their fortunes are to a very broad extent are predicated upon the personality and the prowess of the various rulers themselves. Okay, because they are autocratic forms of governments. Okay, so proceeding forward, let us look at Aurangzeb himself and his policies. Chief among the causes behind the decline of the Mughal Empire can also be, one of the chief causes can also be assigned to the Deccan campaign itself. The long drawn out Deccan campaign of Aurangzeb was a financial disaster because such campaigns require an immense amount of financial resources. Okay, to fund these campaigns, the empire's treasury sometimes becomes empty. Okay, warfare does not come cheap. All right, it does not come cheap in capital resources. It does not come cheap in the human resources also. You need resources in order to fund your campaigns, and the Deccan campaign, it almost drained out the entire drained out the treasury of the Mughal Empire at that point of time. You will find references to the declining resources of the Mughal Empire in works such as the Masir-e-Alamgiri. Okay. You will find references to the declining fortunes resource wise in the Masir-e-Alamgiri, which is a semi biography semi official history of the reign of Aurangzeb. Okay. So the Deccan campaign also becomes a very important pivotal point as far as the decline of the Mughal Empire is concerned. Okay. Along with the reversal of Akbar's policies, that is the policy of religious tolerance. Okay. And how does the Deccan campaign affect the internal administrative and revenue dynamics of the Mughal state? Let us look into that. Okay. Now, by this time, something like a Jagirdari crisis, a Mansab Jagir crisis is brewing. Okay. Because the ranks of Mansabdars are increasing, and also in the increase are their salary. Therefore, there is a necessity for securing more and more Jagirs. Okay. Also, the number of Mansabdars themselves, okay, this is also on the rise. Okay. The number of Mansabdars, because by this point of time many Marathas are also being included into the Mansabdari system. Okay. Mansab Jagir system. There are nobility from conquered areas who are included in the Mansabdari system, and they need to be secured with their own Jagirs. Okay. And therefore, they have to be provided a rank also, they have to be provided salaries also, and all of this, they take a toll on the imperial treasury. With the Deccan campaign, it was hoped that new lands would be secured and the Jagirdari crisis would be solved. But some scholars have pointed out that the Deccan campaign, increased the territorial extent of the Mughal Empire, of course, but these lands were Zor Talab. Alright, these lands were indeed, scholars have opined that these lands were indeed Zor Talab. That means that it is not easy to secure revenues out of these lands. Okay. The presence of Marathas and their raids also, also provide a background to this conversion of these lands as Zor Talab lands. Okay. Because the Marathas are a parallel government which come up at any place, and they raid places and they take Chaut and Sardesh Mukhi. Alright. So, therefore, the Mansabdars are not being paid the adequate amount of salaries in the form of Jagirs. Okay. So, Jagirs are growing scant at this point of time. Okay. There is a scarcity of Jagirs at this point of time. Now, let us look at what happens when the Jagirs get scarce. Okay. As far as the nobility is concerned, Akbari nobility was a composite nobility formed out of various classes or various ruling classes such as the Iranis, the Turanis, okay, Irani, Turani, Sheikhzade. Then we also find Rajputs, and by the time of Aurangzeb, we also find Marathas. Now, because of the scantiness in Jagirs, there is competition brewing among these factions within the nobility, okay, to secure more and more Jagirs in their own respective factions. So, therefore, the Rajput might come in conflict with the Turanis or the Iranis or the Sheikhzades as far as securing Jagir lands for their own class of nobility is concerned. Okay. So, this reduces the prestige, okay, reduces the power and prestige of the ruler himself. Okay. This competition for Jagir, this factionalization within the court of the emperor, it reduces his prestige, it also reduces his power. This also brings into effect, local potentates. Okay. What happens is that, with this factionalization, the zamindari classes also start indulging in supporting various Mansabdari classes, okay, in creating local nodes of power, local regional nodes of power. So, therefore, we see that the scarcity of Jagirs and Mansab lands, okay, Jagir lands, it translates into a crisis in the entirety of the Mughal nobility itself, okay, and it therefore manifests itself as, you see, rise of local and regional nodes of power, because the zamindari classes also start aligning themselves with particular, you see, Jagirdari or Mansabdari ranks, or sorry, social classes, and together they form local and regional nodes of power. Therefore, a fragmentation of Mughal power, okay, and authority in the hands of emperor already takes place, okay. Fragmentation of power begins, okay. In this phase, we see that a fragmentation of power, all right, it already begins, because there are these nodes, local and regional nodes of power that are, you see, coming into place. This entire scene is again compounded but by what has been called the agrarian crisis, okay. This entire scene is again compounded by what has been called the agrarian crisis. Now, because of the scarcity in Mansab lands, okay, because of the scarcity in Jagir lands, what has been done is that the Jamadami, that is the estimate out of these Jagirs, okay, the revenue estimates out of these Jagirs were inflated, because lands were scarce. Therefore, the various Mansabdars were given, you see, inflated estimates of the revenue generated from their own Jagir lands, and these Mansabdars then start pressurizing the peasantry, all right, to realize the inflated estimates. So, till now I hope that it is clear that the because of the inflated amounts that were posted as you see the revenue estimates of particular Jagirs, all right, the Jagirdars, they start pressurizing the peasantry to realize these inflated estimates, and therefore, it gives rise to an agrarian crisis, okay, a very great crisis which results in revolts, rural revolts at this point of time. And these rural revolts, you should also remember that these rural revolts are more often than not led by zamindars, okay. Therefore, again another level of fragmentation. Therefore, by this time you see that from the Mansabdari crisis you come to the nobility crisis, and then this nobility crisis and Mansabdari crisis together, they give rise to an agrarian crisis, and this agrarian crisis again leads to another level of fragmentation of power. You see that Aurangzeb's Deccan campaign, it creates a domino effect, a ripple effect which resonates through all sectors of the administrative and revenue machineries, and together they create such a situation that the weak successors of Aurangzeb cannot handle, okay, it cannot be handled. So, therefore, we see that the Mughals at this point of time are riddled by factionalism in the court, they are riddled with factionalism within the nobility, they are riddled with the rise of regional powers at this point of time. You see, the entire situation is such that we can say that the Mughal empire collapsed under its own weight. It is opined by many scholars that the Mughal empire had become so vast and so large that it could not be administered anymore. And with the expansion of the Mughal empire into the Deccan, we see that this empire has outlived its, you see, its tenuousness, okay, it is untenable by now. By the time the Mughal empire expands into the Deccan, the holding together of this empire becomes untenable, and therefore, lastly, when foreign invasions takes place in the form of Nadir Shah and in the form of Ahmad Shah Abdali. When these foreign invasions takes place in the form of Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali, the Mughals can scarcely put out any form of resistance. In fact, at this point of time, Mughal authority is limited to Delhi and the immediate outskirts and immediate provinces of Delhi only, and therefore there is no way in which the Mughal empire can resist these invasions. Okay. So, with the decline of the Mughal empire, through all of these causes, we see the rise of regional states. Okay. The rise of regional states. Murshid Quli Khan forms a regional state in Bengal. We see Asaf Jah, Nizamul Mulk forming a regional state in Hyderabad. We also see Burhanul Mulk forming a regional state in Awadh. These are important regional states. Although these regional states draw their legitimacy from Mughal emperor, okay, their administrative structure is based in the Mughal administrative structure. All right, their court culture is based out of the Mughal Mughal court culture. Okay, they for all for all purposes of the situation is such that for all purposes they are independent, but at the same time they are drawing the legitimacy of their empire, okay, of their own not empire, their own regional states from the authority of the Mughal emperor, although they are free in all administrative, in all revenue and in all military aspects of rule. These regional states later becomes prey of the English expansionist policies in India. Okay, the English also enter this entire situation of flux, and they contest for power within this entire situation of flux, and then they are able to carve out an empire in India. We see that by the end of the revolt of 1857, all right, Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last Mughal ruler of India, is sent away to Rangoon, where he dies and was buried in an unmarked grave. So, does come to an end the great Mughal empire. Okay, and as I already before the beginning of the video, as I already pointed out, that the death of empires takes place internally. The empires are first hollowed out from inside, and then outside invasions provide the context of their demise. So, this is the end of the Mughal empire. I hope that all of it is clear to you. I hope that you will be studying hard. With that, I take your leave. Thank you.